Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up show time as Liverpool gear up for their first home game since the restart against Crystal Palace at Anfield on Wednesday night in what was hopefully going to be the game where Liverpool would finally seal the deal and clinch that all-important first Premier League title in 30 years. But as we know, because of what happened at Goodison Park and the fact that Liverpool only managed to come away from the Merseyside derby with a single point after a 0-0 draw on Sunday evening, we are going to have to wait until at least Thursday evening to secure the Premier League title. It's a rather odd way in which the permutations have worked out, and I don't know if too many people are aware of how this has ended up working out. But if Liverpool are to win against Crystal Palace on Wednesday, and that is a relatively big if, as I'll come on to later on in the video, because of all the permutations around, the way the team has come out of lockdown and the uncertainty that comes with that and stuff like that. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, Liverpool do win tomorrow night. If Manchester City fail to win at Stamford Bridge the following evening, then Liverpool would secure the Premier League title, which would be a slightly bizarre way for it to happen. I think most of us have now got our sights firmly set on the game at the Etihad in 9 days' time. That's on Thursday, the 2nd of July. Most of us are now eyeing up that as the moment when Liverpool will finally take the crown away from Manchester City in their own backyard, which kind of creates a nice narrative around it as well. So a lot of us are hell-bent on that, but it is worth bearing in mind that if we were to win on Wednesday night, there is always the chance that we could win it without even playing, which would be a bit of a shame. I think that was something we all really wanted to avoid since the start of the season, and certainly since Liverpool gathered up this pretty much insurmountable lead. But as we've all seen, everyone's ideal way of winning the title has pretty much gone up in smoke. So it is now pretty much all about just securing the damn thing, and Liverpool can get one step closer to that by beating Crystal Palace tomorrow evening. And of course, with it being at Anfield, it's the first home game, and Jurgen Klopp has said in his press conference today that he still believes in the home advantage that is offered by that kind of situation. Obviously, with fans now taken out of the picture, and we've looked at everyone's poured over the stats coming in from Germany and places like Italy and Spain, and now the Premier League as well, that have shown that home advantage has pretty much vanished. It's gone from being almost kind of 60-40, 70-30 in favour of home sides in terms of who tends to get positive results out of fixtures, to being pretty much bang on 50-50 in the absence of fans. I think Jurgen Klopp is right to say that this hopefully wouldn't affect his own players, because the players have a very strong emotional connection with Anfield, and admittedly a lot of that does come from the fans. Pretty much all of it does. That's why Anfield has its kind of world-renowned reputation as a brilliant stadium, and one that does so much for the players that are playing in Liverpool shirts and causes so many problems for the guys on the other side. And that's not necessarily going to be the case here, but the players are comfortable in those surroundings now. They associate Anfield with all those moments. They associate it with the 4-0 against Barcelona, the 5-2 against Roma, the 3-1 against City this season, the 2-0 against Man United this season. And as soon as they go in through those gates and they walk into the dressing room and they see all their usual lockers and their usual places, and they're in that kind of comfortable environment that they associate with being happy, with playing well, and with winning football matches, most importantly. So hopefully, regardless of whether or not the fans are there, Liverpool will still go into this with an advantage. And there is, of course, the motivation of keeping Anfield a fortress, especially with the added spice of this being Crystal Palace, who, as we all know, are the last team to actually win a Premier League game at Anfield outside of Liverpool. Since April 2017, when they beat us 2-1, we have not lost a single game in the league at Anfield. So there's a motivation to uphold that record as well, regardless of whether or not the fans are there. It's something that the players, I'm sure, are very proud of, and something that we as fans are very proud of as well, and long may that continue, because you want to keep your home advantage regardless of whether the fans are there or not. You want teams to be coming to Anfield and already feeling beaten, and of course it's not going to be the same without the fans, but you still want to have that psychological blow. You want this to be a tough place for them to come, and the only way for Liverpool to maintain that kind of, not facade because that implies that it's not real, but maintain that kind of aura of invincibility that exists around that stadium, is to keep on winning football matches and to keep on battering everyone who comes in through those Shankly gates. So in terms of who's actually going to be available to try and keep that run going in this game, Jurgen Klopp, of course, did his press conference today and gave us a few injury updates. He said that Salah and Robertson are now available once again. Both of them missed the Merseyside derby. Robertson absent from the squad completely. Salah on the bench, but did not play any role in the game, which I think was pretty disappointing for everyone involved. We all wanted to see him come on at some point, but I think Jurgen Klopp was unwilling to do that unless it was the kind of situation where we needed to bring him on to get a goal, for example, if we were 1-0 down or something like that. He probably was saving him for this game, which is no surprise. I think it doesn't make sense to play the front three every single game because that's just not realistic in the current circumstances. They will get injured. They will get longer layoffs than they would do if you simply rotated the squad rather sensibly. So I'm convinced that Jurgen Klopp is going to carry on doing this going into this game. But hopefully, as we missed Robertson and Salah so much in that game against Everton, partially just because I've looked at the lineup since then and we had no left footers on the pitch, and that seems like a slightly trivial thing to pick up on, but we know that it's something that Jurgen Klopp actually cares quite a lot about. He wants a kind of balance in his side. He wants players who can play with their left, play with their right, ideally are good with both feet. It's something he's spoken about in the past. He has actively sought out left-footed players as a result. So I wouldn't be surprised if he deliberately tries to get Salah and Robertson on the pitch in this game, just to offer a little bit of balance that did seem to be missing from that game in the derby. Apart from them, we've got a mostly fit squad. Matip and Milner both went down injured in the derby and will not be available, which is a little bit disappointing. But to be perfectly honest, those were two players that I don't think any of us would actually put in the number one starting 11 for Liverpool. If you had to pick the best 11 players that could fit into a decent formation, Milner and Matip, while fantastic footballers and you'd love for them to play a part at some point, probably would not be in the starting 11. So with them taken out of the picture, hopefully that doesn't dent Liverpool's starting 11 in terms of quality in any way. So speaking of the starting 11, as for how I think Liverpool are actually going to line up for this game, again, as with the derby, it's quite a difficult one to predict, and there are a few surprises that were thrown in the game against Everton that I don't think any of us saw coming, especially the omission of Salah and Robertson, because we were told by Jurgen Klopp that we had a pretty much clean bill of health going into the game. So one can only assume that the reason they were left out is not because they actually carried any kind of injury, but just for the sake of rotation. So it's perfectly possible that Jurgen Klopp will do that again and throw a few surprises here. But the team that I think is most likely to start, the players that I think he will most want to get onto the pitch for this game, start with Alisson Becker, of course, in goal. There's no surprises there. Put in a brilliant performance in the derby. Made a couple of crucial saves here and there. I think there's that one chance from Richarlison which ends up going wide from quite a narrow angle. And it's hard to really tell, but it looked to me like Alisson got the tiniest of fingertips on it. So if anything, he saved Liverpool from what could have been an embarrassing loss there. So hopefully he starts between the sticks once again, barring any freak injuries that he has occasionally been prone to, unfortunately, Liverpool shirt. But fingers crossed none of those happen between now and Wednesday night. In front of him, I think it's almost definitely going to be Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez, with no Joel Matip, and with the performance that Dejan Lovren put in the Merseyside derby, I don't think you can have any arguments about who Jurgen Klopp will certainly want to start as his centre-back pairing. Gomez and Van Dijk, it was a surprise really to not see them starting in the derby, because I think they are our best centre-half pairing, although given Everton did try and play a lot of balls in the air, Joel Matip has got a lot of height about him, so maybe that's why Jurgen Klopp opted for that kind of solution. But I think for this game, with no Joel Matip and with Dejan Lovren's form clearly going just through the floor, I think it makes no sense to play anyone other than those two, Virgil van Dijk and Dejan Gomez, Joe Gomez, please, as your centre-half pairing. And then either side of them, I think you have to go with Andrew Robertson. We missed him so much in the game against Everton. Trent Alexander-Arnold was just kind of, there was too much responsibility put on him in the right-hand side, and he ended up getting crowded out as a result. Everton did defend very well and caused him problems and made it difficult for him to affect the game. And given that Crystal Palace have a strong reputation, especially away from home as well, for going up against the big sides, packing the important areas and making it very difficult for attacking players and creative players to flourish and create chances, I think we're going to have to do everything we can to make sure we don't end up in a similar situation to the one we had in the derby with Trent Alexander-Arnold or with any other players on the pitch. And we can start by having Robertson on the left-hand side, because that just stretches the play so much more. We've got someone who can get all the way to the byline on the left and someone who could do the exact same thing on the right, and it will cause Crystal Palace all kinds of problems, provided they both start. And I think that is what's going to happen. I would back Trent Alexander-Arnold to play at right back. If it wasn't for the injury to Joel Matip, potentially for fitness's sake, you could have maybe seen Joe Gomez going out to right back and then Joel Matip coming in as a centre-half. But given that Joe Gomez is probably going to have to play centre-half in this game, I would be surprised if we didn't see anything other than Trent Alexander-Arnold as the right back. And then ahead of them, the midfield kind of pretty much picks itself. I think for the sake of a little bit of rotation, I want to bring Gini Wijnaldum in. Didn't have too much of a role to play in the derby, so hopefully will be fit and raring to go for this one. John Henderson has to stay in as the captain, obviously, because, you know, he's having an absolutely boss season for Liverpool so far and didn't really show many signs of fatigue in the Merseyside derby, although, to be honest, he did look ever so slightly off the pace, as did everyone, if we're being perfectly honest. And then Fabinho, I thought, put in a very, very solid performance as the midfield anchor, and I think he should continue in that role for this game. And then ahead of them, two tweaks essentially to the, or I guess one tweak to the front three. I think MINAMINO is going to keep his place because of the fact he only played that 45 minutes against Everton. Jurgen Klopp came out afterwards and said that wasn't a reflection on his performance or necessarily his fitness, but more just him kind of trying to experiment with the 5 sub rule and being able to bring someone off at half time. So I'd be surprised if MINAMINO doesn't start this game. He put in a very solid performance in the derby, showed a lot of energy, and he should be fit and raring to go again. So I'd like to see him back in the side. I'm expecting him this time to go on the left-hand side, partially because Sadio Mane played, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure he played the full 90 minutes of the derby. He was the only member of the front three to do so. So if anyone's going to get a rest, regardless of how Jurgen Klopp does kind of seem to view Mane as this machine who can just play and play and play, and he's backed Jurgen Klopp up on that. He's rarely been rested in Liverpool shirts, certainly in comparison to Firmino and Salah, who have been given the odd layoff wherever necessary. But I think Mane will be taken out of the starting 11 at least for this game. MINAMINO will take his spot on the left, which will mean he can drift in a lot more, which is what he seemed very much inclined to do in the derby as well. He didn't really want to be getting to the byline, going at fullbacks and stuff like that. He wanted to come in and play in the hole a little bit more, and if he plays on that left-hand side, he can cut inside onto his natural right foot, and if he's got Robertson on the left-hand side as well, he can provide the width that would then mean that MINAMINO has the freedom to be a little bit more kind of, you know, essentially free in the role that he plays on the pitch. He can drift out wide, he can drift inside, he can go at defenders, he can drop off and take the ball a little bit. He can do whatever he likes, essentially, and whatever he thinks he's going to benefit the team. And given the way he played in the derby, I think that kind of system would suit him the best. It's obviously not a long-term solution because Sadio Mane is kind of one of the best footballers in the world, so it's very unlikely that MINAMINO is going to take his exact spot in the side, but it will certainly give us a chance to see exactly what he can offer Liverpool and how exactly he can play a role in the starting 11 going forward. So I think he will start at left wing. I think Firmino will come in as a centre forward, and then Salah will be back in the side after his rest in the derby, confirmed to be fit by Jurgen Klopp in his press conference to hopefully bag some goals and keep up that push for the Golden Boot, because once the Premier League's wrapped up, there's not going to be much for Liverpool to play for, so you do feel like that is one thing that is really standing out. It would be a real achievement for Mo Salah as well. It would be fantastic for him to pick up 3 Golden Boots in a row and really cement his status as not just a Liverpool legend, but a Premier League legend as well. So I'm pretty sure he's at least going to start this game on Wednesday night. So taking a little look at Crystal Palace then, they kicked off their restart for the campaign with a very, very solid and pleasing for them at least 2-0 win over AFC Bournemouth at the Vitality Stadium. You know, to be honest, it wasn't the best yardstick in terms of games to measure their performance by coming into this one, because of course Bournemouth and Liverpool are essentially polar opposites in terms of what kind of threat they offer. Palace obviously will have been able to have a lot more of the ball, create a lot more chances. They wouldn't have necessarily had to sit back and be as tight defensively. So it's a bit difficult to measure exactly how they're going to play in this game. It's actually almost better to measure what Everton did, because you can see what it's like when a team comes out of the lockdown, comes out of the long layoff and tries to do a backs to the wall system, playing long balls over the top, trying to cause problems that way. As we saw with Everton, it doesn't always work. It worked when they played it for a late flurry at the end, so hopefully Liverpool can avoid that kind of situation again. In an ideal world, we'll be out of sight by the time we get to the 80th minute, and Palace won't be able to do a kind of last-minute roll of the dice where they just pump the ball forward for 5 minutes and try and get the most out of the centre forwards. But I imagine that is generally what they're going to do. They've done it to pretty great effect against us in the past as well. You know, looking back on our results against Palace, it's hard to really find an easy game in the last 5 years or so, to be perfectly honest. And in a way, as much as I want this Premier League title wrapped up, I'm almost slightly glad that it's not riding on this game, because with it being Crystal Palace and all the narratives that come in around that, the last team to have won at Anfield apart from Liverpool in the Premier League, the team that totally, you know, derailed and destroyed our title charge back in 2014, it's just there will be a little bit hanging over it there, and it might put a little bit of the frighteners both on our players, and it would be motivation for Crystal Palace as well, because they know they can come to Anfield and cause us problems. Last season the 4-3 was a real dog of a game, and it's one where I'm pretty sure I came out of Anfield afterwards and was thinking, how on earth did we even come away with with the 3 points there because it was ridiculous and we had no control over at any point. The season before, they were rubbish under Frank de Boer and we still managed to only scrape a 1-0 win. Before that, we had the 2-1 loss. Before that, a 2-1 loss. Before that, a 3-1 loss. So our results against Palace, you know, the bottom line is at Anfield, they haven't been great since they came back up to the Premier League. So it's probably going to be very, very difficult. Palace are notorious for doing that against sides like us. They've done it to Man City as well. They've done it to Manchester United already this season. I'm pretty sure. I think that was, you know, it feels like years ago now, but they did win 2-1 at Old Trafford right back at the start of the season. So it's going to be a tough game, and I do think, kind of similar to the Merseyside derby, but I think it might be even more influential in this game. Squad size will play a part because we've already seen from the teams that have had to now play 2 games, the ones that are lower down the table are starting to field players that you or I have never even heard of. You know, looking at the West Ham lineup tonight in their game against Tottenham, there's players that seem to have come from absolutely nowhere because every team's having to rotate. It's not just Liverpool, but whereas Liverpool in the derby can bring in Milner for Robertson, Matip for Gomez, even players like Minamino for Salah, you know, it's a drop-off, but Minamino is still a quality player. These teams that are further down are having to promote from their reserves and promote from their academies players that are simply not Premier League quality. And if you put them in a real blood and thunder game back before the lockdown and the restart and everything like that, they probably get found out in a way that maybe that isn't happening so much now that the game is being played at a much slower tempo. But it's up to Liverpool to try and take advantage of that. I'm sure that the Palace we see on Wednesday night will not be a full strength side, and by no means will it be a complete full strength side for Liverpool, but our depth is clearly much, much greater than theirs because we've got the money to pay those players. We've got the level of competitions like European competitions and cup competitions that we can guarantee everyone a certain amount of minutes. We've essentially got a bench that we don't mind rotating in and around with the starting 11 on a semi-regular basis. Palace do not necessarily have that, and it's up to Liverpool to make the absolute most of that on Wednesday night and come away with hopefully all 3 points. Let me know how you think the game's going to go down in the comments below, because of course, being Palace, I think all of us have got a slight mental block around that. We've all got memories of the 3-3, the Istanbul game, and those will of course come back to bite us in the moments leading up to kick-off tomorrow evening at 8:15. But let me know how you think it's going to go down in the comments below. Apart from that, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there, hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel recently. Don't forget to follow at LIVCRY Focus TV on Twitter. I'll be back tomorrow evening after we've hopefully beaten Palace to get one step closer to the Premier League title. Until then, bye for now.